Greetings, YouTube. In the 19th century, there was a form of predictive science known as phrenology. Actually, it was used in some places up into the 20th century. And in phrenology, an exact model was taken of a person's skull. It was examined. They even had a special helmet you could put on a person that had little pins that would feel the skull and give an exact duplication of what that person's skull shape was. And phrenology said that if you knew the shape of a person's skull, the bumps and whorls and whatever happens to be going on that person's skull, you would be able to tell what type of person was inside that skull. That the bumps and such on a human skull were predictive of what the structure was inside the skull and the behavior and personality of the person who owned the skull. Now, you can imagine that just possibly this was crap, because it was. It made absolutely no sense. The shape of a person's skull actually has nothing to do with the person inside the skull. And even the size of the brain doesn't have a great deal to do with the person inside the skull. There are people out there who have had half their brain removed and they can still function. And Einstein, for example, didn't have a particularly large brain, and those with particularly large brains aren't necessarily smarter than anyone else. So the whole checking the shape of the skull thing didn't pan out so well. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, you see, the Transportation Security Administration would like to use some software to predict whether or not a person going into an airport and onto a plane is going to commit a crime, an act of terrorism. Now, I want to relate to an article, but I can give you some of the data right now. Let us, for example, say that there's one terrorist for every million people on daily flights. Okay? That's probably far, far higher than there actually is, but this is nice round numbers to work with. One terrorist, million people. And if this software is 99.9% accurate, which it's not going to be because there's no software that accurate, then that means there's going to be 99 false positives for every terrorist. 99 innocent people will be yanked out of their intended plans and will be considered a viable terrorist threat even though they have done nothing. Now, there's no available data on what the current iteration of this software is doing. However, there is some information about this software when it was in trials. And in trials, it was said to have a 70% chance of accuracy. Now, they don't actually say what that means. They don't know if it means, does it work 70% of the time or does it fail 30% of the time? So the wording was a little blurry. But let's be nice and say it works 70% of the time. Do you know how many people that are going to be declared terrorists who are absolutely innocent? Even if it's twice as accurate as it was then. So it's only going to have a 15% failure rate. Saying there are 15% of the people boarding planes are terrorists when in actuality they aren't. You know how many innocent lives are going to be ruined? But of course, the point of the TSA is not to catch terrorists. The point of the TSA is to give people the impression that it is safe to fly on planes. Because without that illusion of safety, people won't buy plane tickets, they won't fly, the airlines will collapse. We can't have that. Or at least the airlines can't have that, and they've got the money to bribe people in government to produce a dog and pony show, which is what the TSA is, to convince people that they're safe. Now, I don't think the TSA does anything. I don't think it's helped stop any terrorist plots. And in fact, the only terrorist plots I've heard about in the last couple of years that have been stopped by the FBI have been the terrorist plots the FBI helped plan. They found people who were kind of interested in blowing up a plane, so they then fed them information, they gave them chemicals, they essentially nursed these people along until they got to the point where they had gotten ready to commit a terrorist act, even though they probably would have never been able to do that without the help of the FBI. So, I'm not sure that TSA has done anything other than grope innocent people and make the lives of innocent travelers unpleasant. And they are the reason that I will never fly again so long as they're in any kind of power. Because I am not willing to surrender my Fourth Amendment rights just because I want to get on board a glorified bus.